Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 4, Text 2. Evang parampara praptam imang rajarshayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way, but in course of time the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Is the sound coming? Can everyone hear what I'm saying? At the back, ladies sitting at the back. Well, you must be able to hear something, otherwise you wouldn't say no. But it's not clear enough. Hare Krishna. How is it? Hare Krishna. That's much better. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada. It is clearly stated that the Gita was especially meant for the saintly kings because they were to execute its purpose in ruling over the citizens. Certainly Bhagavad Gita was never meant for the demoniac person who would dissipate its value for no one's benefit and would devise all types of interpretations according to personal whims. As soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of the unscrupulous commentators, there arose the need to re-establish the disciplic succession. 5,000 years ago it was detected by the Lord himself that the disciplic succession was broken, and therefore he declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. In the same way, at the present moment also there are so many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to authorized disciplic succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars, but almost all of them do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, although they make a good business on the words of Sri Krishna. This spirit is demoniac because demons do not believe in God but simply enjoy the property of the Supreme. Since there is a great need of an edition of the Gita in English as it is received by the Parampara, disciplic succession system, an attempt is made herewith to fulfill this great want. Bhagavad Gita, accepted as it is a great boon to humanity, but if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculations, it is simply a waste of time. Evang parampara praptam imang rajarshayo viduhu sakalene hamahata yoga nashtah parantapa. Om jnana timiram dhasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshur militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Atapatakamadam Shri Guru Navaishnavang Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parujana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitam Cha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna is speaking the truth to Arjuna. Generally, this world is full of untruth. We are living in the world of untruth. We accept this body to be myself and the whole material world to be the place for my enjoyment. This is not truth. This is falsity. Truth is to understand that I am the eternal servant of Krishna. But we have many different ideas we have dreamed up. There are many different philosophies in the world, but they are all different permutations of the misconception that I am not the servant of Krishna. The truth is to understand I am the servant of Krishna. Non-truth, falsity, mendacity is to consider that I am not the servant of Krishna. So Krishna comes to establish, he states very clearly that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that everyone is meant to serve him. And of course anyone could state that, I could also state that, but in my case it wouldn't be true, and in Krishna's case it happens to be true. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, we find in Bhagavad Gita that Lord Krishna, in the course of establishing the truth that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be surrendered to and served by all other beings, he also disabuses Arjuna of various misconceptions that he may have that were prachalit, that means they were widely spread at that time in human society, so Arjuna may have been influenced by them. We find that during the course of speaking Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna debunks various Buddhist ideas of the non-existence of anything. He debunks the idea of worshipping various demigods for material gain. He debunks ideas of impersonalism, and actually these are various misconceptions which we can understand were prominent at the time when Bhagavad Gita was spoken, that Arjuna may have been confused or bewildered by, and they have remained prominent up to the present time in various forms. And as Krishna suggests in this verse, the truth which he spoke when he says evam, thus, this means, this is in reference to the previous verse, imang vivaspate yogam proktavan hamavinyam vivisram manave praha mano ikshvarkave pravid, that I first spoke this knowledge long ago, that was handed down, evam, this, thus, in this way, parampara, in a disciplic succession, but sakale nehamata yoga nashta parantapa. Now, but due to the influence of time, that knowledge has become covered over. So that means it's become covered over by various misconceptions, or we can say malconceptions. I don't know if there's any such word in the English dictionary as malconception, but we can coin that word. That's it. Misconception means simply that it's a wrong bhuldharana. But malconception means that it's deliberately wrong. It's not only mistaken, but it's deliberately wrong. There's a difference. If someone does something wrong as a mistake, then it's wrong. But if they deliberately do it wrong, then it's much worse. If, just like children, sometimes they get chastised by their parents for doing something wrong. So if they do it, if they keep on doing it and they know it's wrong and they go on doing it, then parents become more angry because this is not right. You should do what is, if you do deliberately what is wrong, that is very bad. So there are various misconceptions in human society which cover over the knowledge of the absolute truth, which Krishna spoke to Vivasvan long ago, and he spoke to Arjuna, which from our point of view seems like a long time ago also. There's various misconceptions. It says that Kale Nehamata, due to the influence of time, they have spoiled or covered over, not the absolute truth cannot be spoiled, but knowledge of the absolute truth in human society can be covered over by the influence of time, which time in the material atmosphere has a degrading influence. That's why it said in the spiritual world there's no time. Well, there is time in another sense, because we know that Krishna has his Ashtakali Alila. So that means Ashtakal means Kal is Kal. Kal means time. But there's not time in the sense that time exists in this material world. Time exists to destroy and to degrade. The influence of time in this material world is that everything goes on within time, but everything becomes destroyed. Everything becomes degraded. The nature of this material world is towards degradation because everyone is here. Ichha dvesha samutena, dvanvamohena bharata. Sarva bhutani samaham sargayanti parampara. Everyone has come to this material world with ichha, means material desire, and dvesh, that bad feeling, which is just the opposite of prem, love of Krishna. So because of dvesh, because of malintent, everything tends towards degradation. The opposite of degradation is progress, actual progress. Progress not as conceived of in the modern age, simply building buildings, but progress of consciousness, evolution of consciousness, development of consciousness to higher and higher stages. But if one is infected with dvesh, then there's no question of development of consciousness to higher levels. One is on a very low level. Just like we see an animal which personifies dvesh, bad feeling, is a snake. If you see the eyes of a snake, it's simply full of hatred. So everyone in this material world is possessed of dvesh to a greater or lesser extent, and thus they cannot properly develop unless they get the impetus from a higher level. Therefore Krishna comes and he teaches Bhagavad Gita to pull us up out of this atmosphere of dvesh. And he also sends his representatives to continue speaking this knowledge in human society. Therefore the parampara comes. However, the tendency of the snake-like living beings is to misinterpret or malinterpret this knowledge, because in general people are not very sincere to understand the absolute truth. People have come to this material world with a desire to forget Krishna. Krishna bhuli se jivan adi bahimuk atev maya tare teya samsara shuk. Forgetting Krishna, deliberately forgetting Krishna. We have come to this material world. We have given up our relationship with Krishna. And we have come to this material world and we have voluntarily accepted the difficulties of Maya. We are so foolish. We have deliberately accepted the tribulations of Maya rather than surrender to Krishna. We'd rather think myself an independent enjoyer, actually an independent sufferer, than we'd rather be an independent sufferer than a dependent servant. So this is our rascal mentality. So that tendency is there to misinterpret it, change it. We find that any religion in the world today, any religious system, we'll often find that what's going on, or what is commonly considered to be that religion, if you see the original teachings of the founder of that religion, they're often quite different. That's why scholars of Christianity, they often refer to it as churchianity, because in a sarcastic way, they refer to it as churchianity, because it's not really got very much to what Jesus was talking about, or acting, or doing. In fact, he never spoke of a church, or pope, or buildings, or any such thing. That was all developed later. Jesus himself lived an extremely simple life. He never taught that there should be any big organization or any such thing. So, sometimes it's called Paulianity, because St. Paul came just after Christ, and he gave in the name of Christ, he gave different ideas, which is developed now as churchianity. So anyway, that's just one example. Even On the even on the material platform, you see that when some ideologist he starts some philosophical system of thought, then different people interpret it in different ways. Just like in Marxism, of course Marxism is more or less finished in the world at the present time. You never know, it might make a comeback, or it doesn't look like it. But within Marxism there were different interpretations. And the Chinese communists, they split from the Russians because they from the Soviets, USSR, because they accused the Russians of being revisionists, because they said they weren't properly following Marx. So there's much debate on what it meant to actually follow Marx. The Soviet system was supposed to be Marxist-Leninist. And you'll find in West Bengal there's the CPIM, CPIML, and all different CPI and then CPIM, and they're different, based on different philosophical interpretations of Marx. Philosophical is a word which is used too generously for all kinds of nonsense ideas. Prabhupada used to say philosophy, which is closer to the mark. So even mundane philosophers who become prominent, you'll find that different people, their subsequent followers, they interpret in different ways and they revise in different ways, and therefore the parampara is broken, or it comes down in different strands. So that tendency is there, that the truth is the truth. It is as it is. But how it is understood, or how it is misunderstood, is how it is presented in human society, that is vital. So I'm talking about this not out of, this may all be very philosophically interesting, and I can understand that many of you have an interest in spiritual philosophy, as you're all listening quite attentively, it seems. But I'm not talking all these things simply for the sake of some philosophical analysis, armchair philosophy, but it affects all of our lives because we have taken to Krishna consciousness, which is supposed to be based upon a philosophical understanding. Prabhupada, he gave these books, he put so much endeavor into writing these books because he wanted that the Krishna conscious movement that he was starting in the Western world, he wasn't starting a new parampara, but he was continuing the parampara, but in different circumstances under any in which it had previously been presented. So Prabhupada wanted that this parampara continue, and therefore he made the great endeavor. It's not an easy thing to compose so many books, because he wanted that the subsequent generations of devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement understand Krishna consciousness as it is. Prabhupada used this word, as it is, which I was surprised when I first saw Bhagavad Gita as it is. Why is Prabhupada writing as it is? You don't see as it is. You just presume that anything you see is as it is. If you go to buy, say you want to go in a shop, you want to buy some apples. So please give me some apples. These are apples. They really are apples. They definitely are 100%. Yeah, okay. They look like apples. You don't have to tell me that. It's okay. I understand they're apples. So why it's like that? If Bhagavad Gita means Bhagavad Gita, then why say as it is? Why should you have to say as it is? That was my misconception. Prabhupada, to think that every Bhagavad Gita, there's so many editions, that it's all Bhagavad Gita. They may be the translation of the verses. But it's not as it is unless it's presented in parampara, properly in parampara. Otherwise, it may be that the translations are pretty much faithful to what Krishna said. But the personal concept of the translator, or even worse, the commentator. I mean, if they only translate, that's bad enough. But if they're not actually as it is, followers of the parampara. But if they make commentary, then it really becomes as it is not. It becomes very bad. It becomes a myth. That's why there's so many interpretations of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada said, I'm not interpreting. Interpreting means that you apply your intelligence to understand in a manner in which you place your intelligence as being more important than the statements of Bhagavad Gita. In other words, Krishna said something and now it's my duty to interpret it. The Prabhupada said, that is not the way to understand. It's not that you take it and then with my vast intelligence, I shall explain what Krishna had to say, which is not intelligible unless I explain it, because of my great intelligence. And Krishna may not have expressed himself very clearly, but I shall express better what he was trying to say. What Krishna seems to be trying to say here, and then all Bhagavad spoken. All nonsense. So the system is to hear submissively. Prabhupada sometimes said that the disciple should be like a blank slate. He should be willing to receive the knowledge that is given. Prabhupada also commented that when he went to the Western countries, it was much easier to preach in the sense that although people didn't know anything about Krishna, that was actually an advantage in one sense. Because that they didn't know means that they didn't have misconceptions. Whereas in India, people know about Krishna, but so many misconceptions, because they've heard from people who have misconceptions, who have applied their misconceptions to re-explain Bhagavad Gita as it is not. And therefore, even though Krishna clearly explains his transcendental position in Bhagavad Gita, many people they even may be able to quote the shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, but they don't accept Krishna as he is. They have misconceptions about Krishna. They think that Krishna is a symbolic representation of the absolute truth. For instance, that's a very common idea. Or that all the gods are the same. And Krishna is one of them. Another misconception. That's why Prabhupada once said that his purport to Bhagavad Gita are more important than the shlokas. Now, doesn't that sound strange? Not more important in the sense that the translation is there, but to understand it, you have to hear from Prabhupada, who is empowered by Krishna and by the previous acharyas, to explain it. Otherwise, if we hear Manmana Bhava Madbhakta, whatever verse it may be, that always think of me, become my devotee. But what does it mean to think of Krishna? That means, if we have a misconception and we're thinking of Krishna, but we're thinking Soham, I am you and you are me and we are all together, everything is all one, then that thinking of Krishna will not be the manner of thinking of Krishna that Krishna enjoins us to do. And Bhavamad Bhaktaha, if we think, we should become a devotee of Krishna. I become a devotee. I worship Krishna, and that's very good, because eventually I can become Krishna by doing so. These are common misconceptions. So we find that even many people who know many verses, or even all the verses of Bhagavad Gita, but they don't understand even one single akshara, due to not having had it explained to them properly. So, of course, Arjuna, he understood Bhagavad Gita without any other explanations. But we require to hear it in parampara, in a proper parampara method. Otherwise, what happens, you see, is that we bring our own conceptions to the study of Bhagavad Gita. Even Prabhupada himself is explaining, we may bring our own misconceptions. Now we may think that Evam parampara praptam, this knowledge has to be received in disciplic succession. So we should hear this from a disciple of Prabhupada. That makes sense, doesn't it? That Prabhupada gave Bhagavad Gita as it is, and if we accept the system of parampara, and we accept that Prabhupada is a unprecedented acharya in the parampara, then the obvious thing should be that we should hear Bhagavad Gita from a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Right? Then that's parampara. But then some difficulty may come there, and you may have noticed this, that on various issues, various disciples of Srila Prabhupada may say different things. Did you notice? So, now a difficulty comes. Where is the parampara? Is it going down this way? Is it going that way? Is it going both ways? Is that possible? That may be possible also. There may be that different followers or disciples of Srila Prabhupada have slightly misunderstandings which are within the basic parameters of accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and ourselves as His eternal servants. So there may be some, even great acharyas differ in opinions in some instances. But that doesn't mean that necessarily, that even if they appear to contradict each other, that doesn't necessarily mean that one of them is wrong. It may be that different acharyas have different opinions, and that is a different approach to understanding the same subject matter. Although actually to properly understand this knowledge, it requires to go very, very deeply. Otherwise, the misconceptions of others, we may imbibe them, or we may bring our own misconceptions. Now, I was saying that Prabhupada said we should be like a blank slate. But practically all of us come to Krishna consciousness we all come with some preconceived preconception. Prabhupada was saying in the Western countries it's better, people just accepted what I said. But nowadays we see that many followers of Srila Prabhupada, it's like many of the old ideas have resurfaced. Because, of course, most of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada from the Western countries. But cultural conditioning is very strong. And unless one fully accepts Sarvametabditang manye yangman vadasi Keshava, unless one fully accepts, as Arjuna accepted, Arjuna said to Krishna that everything you say I fully accept. And unless we fully accept what Krishna says or what Prabhupada says, that means we are not fully, means we're bringing in some modicum of our own ideas or preconceptions that we have had previously or different interpretations of our own. So, therefore, we find that at the present time there are various moves to within our ISKCON, within our Krishna conscious movement, there are beginning moves to try to align the Vaishnava philosophy that Prabhupada gave us to be more in line with modern Western ways of thought, which is dangerous because that means the same thing is going on. That by the influence of time means that someone says something different. At some point someone says something different, and then the parampara is lost. Or it becomes altered, and which means lost. It may be that someone is going on saying that, yes, I'm in this parampara, that parampara, but it's actually they're not following. Just like, for instance, one gross example is there was an initiated disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who wrote many books on Vaishnavism, but actually after the departure of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he became the Shiksha disciple of Babaji in Vrindavan, who's actually Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was absolutely against these Babajis with their misconceptions of devotional service. So among the followers of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he presented himself, yes, I'm in this line. But actually you see from his writing, and if you speak with him, and so many funny things he used to say. So you could say, yes, he's a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was, in the sense that he sat in an initiation ceremony, he had his name, he was given a spiritual name. But later, it was seen that he didn't follow the Shiksha of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Therefore, he was a deviant. He wasn't actually in the parampara. That's what I'm saying when you say that if we think that we should hear from a disciple of Prabhupada, that's true, but we have to see who is actually a disciple of Prabhupada. It means they should speak the same philosophy. Now, I'm talking about in the Western countries, the Western devotees, they may have different ideas. But remember I was saying that Prabhupada was saying that the Western devotees, they're easier to preach to because in India people already have so many misconceptions or preconceptions about Krishna or about Hinduism, for want of a better term. So we see that, here's an example. Here we have a statue of Nagaraj, Lord Shiva, sitting here in this Vaishnava home. Now, I can deduce from this, or I can presume, that the Vaishnavas in this home, they come from that kind of background. That previously their Ishta Devata, or whatever you want to say, was Lord Shiva, at least they had much affinity towards worshipping Lord Shiva. And it would appear from the fact that Lord Shiva is still dancing there, that affinity is still there. Now, often when I'm traveling in Russia, I stay in the homes of devotees, and we'll find many times there are pictures of Jesus and Mary, which the devotees, they come from that kind of background. So you may say, well, and you may say, and actually it's true in one sense, there's nothing wrong with keeping a statue of Lord Shiva because he's also a great devotee. But just, isn't it interesting to note that you're not keeping a picture of Jesus and Mary. You're keeping the statue of Lord Shiva because your attachment was there before. And in Russia, the picture is there of Jesus and Mary because that was their previous or still present attachment. So you can say there's also nothing wrong with keeping pictures of Jesus and Mary because that's also in the devotional line. But just see, it's not that the picture of Jesus and Mary is being kept there particularly because it's been taught by Prabhupada or our acharyas. It's not intrinsically against the system of devotion, but it's not taught by Prabhupada or our previous acharyas. Similarly, you can keep a statue of Lord Shiva and respect him as a great devotee, but it's not that Prabhupada taught us to do that. Rather, it's our attachment which we're bringing in, and maybe we're dovetailing it and this and that. But it may be that the tendency is to go back towards that, or maybe not fully come to Sarvadhaman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Raja. It may be that if we keep various attachments to that which is not given by our acharyas, that we actually don't give up our previous religious or semi-religious attachments. Now we may say that, well, it's all right to worship Jesus, or to at least to keep some attachment, or to Lord Shiva because they're also great devotees. We may understand that. But along with the attachment that we are retaining, and we may note that devotees from Hindu backgrounds, they tend to be attached to the previous gods that they were worshipping, or maybe still are worshipping, and that those from a Christian background, they tend to be attached like that, which again suggests that it's not purely for the sake of a devotion, but rather to maintain it's that we find it painful to give up that old attachment. Now, along with that attachment to, for instance, Lord Shiva or Jesus and Mary, along with that, it's liable to be the previous misconceptions that we also had. In other words, if we may have been worshipping Lord Shiva previously to coming to Krishna consciousness, but we weren't worshipping him as Param Vaishnava, because we had no such conception. We were worshipping, there's so many different misconceptions, but generally Lord Shiva is worshipped by persons who are ultimately of a very impersonal understanding. Or even Jesus and Mary say, well, Jesus was teaching about bhakti, but maybe. And like churchianity, it doesn't teach pure bhakti. It's very mixed up ideas of mundane. Look how Jesus helps us physically, and then mundane ideas. Pray to God, and generally everyone thinks like that. Pray to God and He will help you. He will help you with your backache and your mortgage and your legal case and your family problems, like this. So, mundane concepts of religion. So, if we maintain previous conceptions, then previous attachment, then the tendency is to bring with them the mundane conceptions of religion, which actually pollute the process of pure devotional service. So Vaishnava gurus, they may say to their disciples, all right, you worship, you go on worshipping like that. But we should understand, if they say that's all right, it's not that it's not necessary to devotional service to worship various demigods. And as a matter of fact, Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he doesn't speak very favorably of demigod worship, and our great Acharya Narottam Das Thakur says, Anya Deva Shrai Nai Tomare Kahilu Bhai A Bhakti Paramakaran. Giving up the idea of taking shelter of any other God but Krishna, this is the cause of our attaining to pure devotional service. Attaining to pure devotional service, that is the fact, Sharanagati. There are 6 parts of Sharanagati. Anukul Yasya Sankalpa Pratikul Yasya Vajanam Rakshishati Vishva. So Gupta Dvaivanam. So this Gupta Dvaivanam, this Jiva Goswami has analyzed that this is the essence of Sharanagati. Other parts are there, but the essence is Gopta Dvaivanam. That to consider that I am simply dependent upon Krishna. No one else. And then other things follow, to think that Krishna is protecting me, to be humble, to accept only things which are favorable for devotion, to reject other things which are unfavorable. They all spring, or they all byproducts of this basic principle of Sharanagati, to think that Sri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Krishna only is my shelter, no other shelter. I have no other shelter but Krishna. So that tendency to seek shelter of others than Krishna, that is an impediment on the path of pure devotional service. And even attachment to various other forms of devotion other than that given by our great acharyas, that in it, like I say, it may not in itself be intrinsically wrong, but it is we tend to adhere to it more because of our attachment than actually for the sake of pure devotion. Because we have some material attachment like that. So this call of Krishna, Savadhaman Parittaja Mamekam Sharanam Raja, it's actually a call for us to give up all attachments, even those which may seem religious, and fully surrender to Krishna. Now, generally, as I say, the conditioned soul, we are all envious of Krishna. Ichchadvesha. We have many material desires. So, what often happens is that we are attracted to someone may become attracted to the path of pure devotional service. But at the same time, they're not really ready to fully surrender to Krishna. This can create various problems. Problems that we often try to adjust the philosophy or teachings to suit our own ideas. And we may do so in a very subtle or devious manner. In other words, to give an example, we may say that yes, I'm only doing that which is favorable for devotion. So I'm only reading this newspaper for 3 hours a day to find out how to, what's going on in the news, so I can preach better to people. Or I'm only working hard to get so much money. I don't have to work so hard, but I could work less hours and have more time for reading Srimad Bhagavatam, but I'm only working hard to get more money so that I can give more money to donate to the Krishna conscious movement. So that may sound like a very good intention, and it may be, but it may be also that we're attached to our career advancement more than to our advancement in Krishna consciousness. Because we still cherish the idea that, I can be a big shot in the material world. So there may not even be harm with being a big shot in the material world, if we're fully Krishna conscious. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of big shots. Maharaj Yudhishthira, Maharaj Ambarish, they were big kings. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if we have a material desire that I will be a great person in this material world, then that will be an obstruction in our path of pure devotional service. And if we try to philosophize that and make some philosophical understanding that, well, actually I'm doing everything for Krishna, when we're not, then it can be very subtle and misleading. And even if one thinks I shall be a guru and I shall do this and I shall do that, and instead of thinking I shall be a servant, it can be a very subtle difference. I shall collect so many disciples and I shall I'll become number 33 in the list after Prabhupada, I'll show myself I'm bigger than others. I'm really the one to give out the mercy. If one, even in the mood, it may be that the mood of devotion, that yes, let me try to serve the previous acharyas by preaching, that Maya is very subtle, and that can become mixed with subtle desires to some ambition to prove oneself as a great devotee. So it can be very, very subtle. We may not even recognize it ourselves, how spiritual desires become mixed with material desires. It may be that we're doing it for Krishna, but maybe it's like 80% for Krishna and 20% for my own name and fame, and by the influence of Maya that gradually changes to 20% for Krishna and 80% for myself. So Maya is very subtle, and this is how the process of devotion can become subtly or grossly covered over. In our own individual lives and even in whole paramparas, we find that after the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, immediately after he came, there's so many misinterpretations And by the time Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur became so bad that he went on a lifelong campaign against the misinterpreters of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. He was known as Lion Guru. But most of his lion-like fighting was, well, of course, actually on all fronts. He conducted war on all fronts, like Hitler. Like Eastern Front, Western Front, Norway, North, South, everywhere. Of course, he eventually got smashed. But the Lion Guru, he was against the mundane, academic, empiric approach, as he said. But a lot of his energy was in rebutting the wrong and, as he pointed out, actually very envious misconceptions of those who purported to be devotees and followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but were actually very much misrepresenting him, and they were actually envious of him in the name of being his devotees. So this is what can happen if we don't faithfully follow the parampara. And then the question may come, well, what does it mean to faithfully follow the parampara? Actually, it's a very simple formula. You simply Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Kore Aikya Anya Kariha Manayasha. Whatever is spoken by the Guru, we should accept that, understanding his words to be fully transcendental, following the parampara, and not desire anything else. So it's very simple, but it can, if we get into the intricacies of scriptural analysis or exegesis, or if we get into the intricacies of, even before exegesis comes epistemology. These are all technical terms which you may or may not understand. But epistemology, that means that's a Western philosophical term, as you can understand. That means that's the beginning of philosophy. That how do we understand anything? What can we accept as knowledge? What is admissible as knowledge? And then exegesis, science of hermeneutics, means the science of scriptural interpretation. How do we understand scripture? So this is very important. Just like say Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matah sarvam prabhavate. Everything emanates from me. That is understood differently by the Vaishnava and by the Mayavadi. The Vaishnava understands this means that Krishna is the supreme absolute truth source of everything. Janmadhyate yataha. That this statement of Krishna signifies that the absolute truth which is described in the Upanishads as the source of everything is Krishna. But the Mayavadi interprets it. That's what it means to take Bhagavad Gita as it is. Krishna says, I am the source of everything, and the Vaishnava accepts Krishna is the source of everything. But the Mayavadi takes this to mean that Krishna is speaking as the symbol of the impersonal is the source of... Actually, the impersonal Brahman is the source of everything, and Krishna is the personified impersonal Brahman, come to explain that actually the impersonal Brahman is the source of everything. It's a convoluted explanation. It's not what Krishna says. It's not Bhagavad Gita as it is. That's how the Mayavadi understands it, because he's envious of Krishna. And the Mayavadi will say, well, the Vaishnava is just overly simplistic. Have you heard that before? That they say, well, Vaishnavas, they're just very simple. Why should they just accept some God as being, a person as being all in all, but according to the Mayavadi, well, obviously that can't be correct, because the absolute truth must be impersonal. So how are we to understand scripture? Now, basically, those who are Vaishnavas, they accept Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. They don't try to explain the Bhagavad Gita better than Krishna does. Krishna never said, I am a symbol of the absolute truth. Or I am... In fact, this very impersonalist idea, he has rebutted himself in Bhagavad Gita. Avyaktam vyaktim apanam manyante mama buddhayaha. Krishna says that those who think that I was previously, unmanifest, but I've become manifest. This common Mayavad idea that Krishna is simply a manifested representation of the ultimate truth, which is ultimately unmanifest. Those who think like that, Krishna says, abuddhayaha, damn fools, rascals. So, but they, I don't know how they interpret that, but I'm sure they have some method of, twisting it around. So, Krishna is as he is the Supreme Absolute Truth. And he presents himself as such in Bhagavad Gita. But as conditioned souls, we are awarded by Maya as a prize for being so stubbornly envious of Krishna. We are awarded the prize of tremendous resources of intelligence, of misplaced intelligence, to in an apparently intelligently way, but which is actually extremely foolish because it's against our own self-interest, to construe skewed explanations of Scripture, which have got absolutely nothing to do with the real message of Scripture, which is to explain the absolute truth. But in the name, we'll speak, yes, we are speaking Scripture, we're speaking the absolute truth, but it's nothing to do with actually what Krishna says. That's what we'll find so many people speaking on Bhagavad Gita, and they're quoting shlokas and explaining this and that, but it's got nothing to do with what Krishna says. It does not explain Krishna as the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead who we surrender to, even though they may quote dozens of shlokas, but due to their misinterpretation, even though they may be very intelligently describing in terms of Sanskrit grammar and so many things, but they missed the point. They got it wrong. They have spoiled the teaching. The teaching cannot be spoiled, but their presentation, it spoils the ability of the hearers to understand Bhagavad Gita. Just like we find when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was at that time a great Mayavadi. So, he listened to him for 7 days, explained Vedanta. Sarvabhauma explained Vedanta to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and after 7 days he said, "You listened all this time, but I don't know whether you can understand or not because you don't say anything." And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Yes, actually I understand Vedanta, but I can't understand anything what you're talking about because it's got nothing to do with Vedanta. The Vedanta is very clear, but your explanations are just covering it over like the cloud covers the sun." The Sarvabhauma was a little upset. He mean, I've been talking 7 days and you didn't agree with anything I said? That's right. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained how Sarvabhauma's his ideas were all wrong. He didn't understand Vedanta at all. So, like that, of course, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is a great scholar. We don't have such scholarship. We don't find such scholarship nowadays. But nevertheless, people are very expert in misinterpreting in a manner. I mean, even Shankaracharya, he explained Bhagavad Gita, so many things. But nowadays, you see, even Shankaracharya, I mean, he was misinterpreting Bhagavad Gita to not show Krishna as supreme, although he did also state Narayana Parovyakta. But basically his presentation of Gita is in an impersonal manner. But even he would weep to see the people who presenting themselves as swamis, sadhus. I mean, it's really pathetic actually. At the present time we see India, which at least you see in the past, there were followers of Shankaracharya, they would discuss with the followers of Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya, and that's still going on. But nowadays, the main, of course, they still have debates. Still, you'll find just like especially this Sringeri Shankaracharya, he trains a few disciples in very stringently in pristine Mayavad, and then they sometimes go down and the Udupi Swamis and they debate but it's all lost. It's all lost on the average person in the street. They have no idea. The average Hindu who may call himself a follower of Madhva or whatever, they have no idea what they're discussing. It's on a very abstruse level. For one thing, it's discussed in Sanskrit, and anyway, the philosophy is so abstruse that no one knows what they're talking about. And people in general have become followers of some silly fisherwoman, or some ugly guy with curly hair, black guy from who makes some waterworks and drinking water projects and so many absolutely nonsense things. So far removed from anything really, from any philosophy. There's no philosophy. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about this silly fisherwoman from Kerala. Means Amma. Hare Krishna. And then the guy with the fuzzy hair with the waterworks. So I mean, there's no philosophy. There's no systematic philosophy. It's just crass foolishness. That's all. So, definitely, they're not in any parampara, because parampara means transmission of knowledge, but there's no knowledge. Just crass foolishness. So these are very gross examples of how people have deviated from the proper understanding of Shastra, even though they consider themselves Hindus. But there's no discussion of it. There's no philosophical understanding. Nor are people interested in any philosophical understanding. You just hug some woman and, what's she doing hugging everyone anyway? It's not chaste. Women are supposed to be chaste. And that's it. And then they feel, how wonderful. Amma. That's it. And that's supposed to be religion. And we have Bhagavad Gita. And they're supposed to be Hindus. And they know nothing. And they're just completely sentimental fools. So these are very gross manifestations of deviation from Para. But we shouldn't think that this can't happen to us. That, we're in ISKCON and we're following Prabhupada and that's it. And that means we've got the right idea. We don't automatically have the right idea. It's not that you pick up a bead bag and you Hare Krishna a little bit and you get initiated and that's it. I'm in the parampara and that's, this is it. You have to understand what's in the book. Why did Prabhupada give the book? So that we could, I got a set in my house. Now don't bother me anymore. I already got a set. Or that, I have the books in my house and I learned some shlokas and now I'm a preacher. And now I'm going to teach you about bhakti and I'm the latest avatar. Watch out. So we should be very careful in the name of Prabhupada teaching all kinds of things that Prabhupada didn't teach. It's very easy to misunderstand and misinterpret. I was giving yesterday an example. I find with my own disciples, I find my disciples writing something. I said this, and that. I don't remember saying any such thing. They're saying I said like that, but I wouldn't say. I would. Not only do I not remember saying, but I if I did say that, then throw me off this seat. I shouldn't be sitting here. I didn't say that. I shouldn't say that. And if I did say that, then put me back on, take away my initiation, let's start all over again. I got it wrong. So, tendency to misunderstand or misinterpret is very, very strong, especially in Kali Yuga. We're less intelligent. And we have very devious mentality. So, how to understand what is in parampara? That requires us to study with humility, submissiveness. Submissiveness doesn't mean just that, Prabhupada was pretty good. Pretty good teacher. I like a lot of what he says. It's nice. But I also know a lot of things. So, you don't really have to accept everything he says. But we do. Then you become a disciple. Now, what does it mean to accept everything he says? Does that mean that, yes, you just become a fool with no intelligence? Prabhupada said this, okay, alright. I believe it. And not just believe, we're supposed to understand also. Because if we don't understand, then we'll misunderstand. Because we do have intelligence, and either we're going to use it properly or we're going to misuse it. So if we don't understand, then definitely we're going to misunderstand. So this knowledge is not just yes, okay, I believe it. It's not like the Christians say. You just believe in Jesus, then you go to heaven. Just believe, that's all. No philosophy. The philosophy is given so that we can properly understand things as they are. So that requires us to apply our intelligence. And how is that intelligence to be applied? Because we tend to be a very rascal mentality, tendency to misinterpret, to misunderstand. So Prabhupada said blank slate. That means that we should be prepared to accept everything that is given. Again, we see just like in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna didn't accept with blind intelligence. He asked Krishna questions. When he didn't understand, at some point he would ask Krishna to explain. Jayasi chet karmanase mata buddhya jana. We find the chapters unfold. Tat kim kamane ghore mam niyojyasi keshava. That Krishna asked that. Arjuna asked Krishna that, first of all you say that it's better to work in devotion, and then you say that it's better to renounce, and what's going on? I don't understand. So intelligence should be applied, but with the understanding that actually I'm not so intelligent. That my intelligence requires to be guided by he who is in contact with the supreme intelligence, which is Krishna. And contact means through the parampara system. So ultimately it requires intelligence. And ultimately it requires, I didn't use the right word there, ultimately it requires not only intelligence, but it requires sincerity and purification. It's not that I'm thinking that you'll just sit down and read all these books. It's not only by reading we can understand. Although I'm saying we should understand philosophy clearly, at the same time it's not simply by reading that we can understand. Because Atashi Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahyam indriyai sevam mukhehi jivada swayameva spuratiyataha. Krishna reveals himself to those who are serious to serve him. So we have to become purified, develop the service attitude, chant the holy names of Krishna, and understand Krishna as he is. Ultimately it depends on the mercy of Krishna, which is received through disciplic succession. But we can get that mercy by becoming purified, by following the process of sadhana and developing the desire to sincerely serve Krishna, and not deliberately inventing misconceptions, and at the same time being very careful to be free from misconceptions. If we hear anything which we don't properly understand, or it sounds like it's a little fishy, then we should try to understand that clearly and philosophically. Even if we hear something from our guru which may sound to us somewhat like not quite correct, we can ask him and say, well, what you said doesn't seem to really fit. That's allowed. That is not only allowed, but it's required. Arjuna did. When he heard Krishna say something which didn't seem to make, to Arjuna it didn't seem to be correct, he asked Krishna. He didn't say, you nonsense, what rascal you're talking. He didn't say like that. But he said, look, doesn't seem to be right. And then Krishna explained. So that can be also. Sometimes people ask me like that also, that, well, you said like that, but didn't Prabhupada say like this? And then I explain why I said like that, and although it may apparently appear to be contradictory, it's not, because Prabhupada also said this. And you see, it may be difficult to understand, also, because sometimes Prabhupada, or any Acharya, it may sometimes seem that he says some things which contradict himself even. So it requires not exactly empiric intelligence to understand, or the empiric approach to understand, but a purely spiritual approach. That if we're in the mood of service to Krishna and to the Acharyas, then they can reveal to us. But it's not just by an academic approach that we can understand. Krishna wasn't speaking to Arjuna simply as a philosophical, it wasn't simply philosophical, but it was practical. Arjuna had to decide whether to fight or not to fight. Sometimes it's said that there's black and there's white and there's many shades of grey. So that may be true in some spheres, but the decision whether to fight or not to fight, there's no in between. You can't half fight. And then if you half fight, you'll very quickly be fully dead. So either you fully fight or you don't fight at all. It was either A or B. There was no in between. So Arjuna had to decide. Definitely Bhagavad Gita was a philosophical discussion. But the point I'm making is, it wasn't simply philosophy as for the sake of philosophy. It wasn't divorced from practical life. It was very much relevant to the major decision that Arjuna had to make. To fight or not to fight. And that was, Krishna spoke to him so that he would make the decision on a philosophical basis, based on the philosophical understanding of what is the absolute truth. What is the highest truth? What is his highest duty? Arjuna was offering various arguments for not fighting based on dharma. What is his duty? But Krishna brought him to an understanding of the absolute truth, what is his highest duty. So, philosophy is to be understood. Always, it's very helpful if there are different doubts about philosophical understanding of Krishna consciousness. It's always good to keep the essence in mind. What is the essence of Krishna consciousness? That we have to act for the satisfaction of Krishna. And we have to do so under the guidance of the great Paramahamsa Acharya, especially in the present age, Srila Prabhupada. So if we keep these two principles in mind, then even complex points, they become clear. There may be various complex points. Actually, Krishna consciousness is very simple. You chant Hare Krishna, you'll be happy. You take prasad, surrender to Krishna. But it may be that various philosophical discussions come up, and it's coming up. So many people, they go searching through the fish market called the internet, and they find so many smelly things there. And then they come, I saw this, and now I'm confused. What do you expect? If you go in the fish market, you'll come out stinking. So if you go through the internet and so many people with stinking consciousness there, then you'll also become affected. And then you come to me and someone says, it's not, now this idea, that idea, become confused. So there are so many philosophical, funny ideas floating around the fish market of people's brains It's actually not necessary to get involved in all these things. Better we read Bhagavad Gita as it is and not become unnecessarily confused. But I've just given some basic guidelines on, first of all, understanding that not everything that we hear about Krishna consciousness is the absolute truth. Because there are many persons who are not situated on the platform of proper understanding of Krishna consciousness, who present that this really is Krishna consciousness as it is. I've really got it. You see, Prabhupada, it's pretty good, but I've got a better idea. Or they may say Prabhupada was pretty bad, he had the wrong idea. They're also saying like that. He's rascal, some rascal. They would have, coming from the Western world, they would never heard anything about Krishna if Prabhupada hadn't gone there. And then they're saying, well, actually Prabhupada, he wasn't properly in parampara. So many rascals. So, some basic faith is required. Not blind faith, but it's a very simple thing to understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that this Krishna consciousness would be spread all over the world, and Prabhupada did it, and we can understand from that he is an empowered representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He wasn't a motivated person who went to try and collect some followers. But people who are of very wicked intelligence, they see like that, because they just like Duryodhana, Krishna sent Yudhishthira Maharaj, go out and bring me one sample of a wicked person. Yudhishthira Maharaj came back and said, couldn't find anyone. Then he sent Duryodhana out and said, you go back and bring me back one good person. He went back and said, I couldn't find anyone. So, their own conscience is so corrupt that they presume themselves to be great and pure, and the great Vaishnava acharyas to be corrupted. So these things are going on. I just happen to know because someone sent me recently some nasty thing written by some nasty people, and then I spent some time rebutting it. All silly things. Very silly things. You're not properly in parampara because you wear red cloth. Vaishnavas shouldn't wear red cloth. Spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world, if you wear red cloth to do so, then wonderful. Even if there may be some minor rule which doesn't apply to great empowered personalities, that one shouldn't wear red cloth. You shouldn't cross the ocean. And then how are you going to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world without crossing the ocean? So, envious critics. So they are one class of persons who attack our parampara, and there are others who may be from within also, who misrepresent in various ways. So we have to be very careful in the matter of following Srila Prabhupada. And then we can get his mercy and go back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. Any questions? How can a grihastha become fully surrendered to Krishna? You follow the process of Krishna consciousness given by our Acharya, and you can be fully surrendered to Krishna. You stop thinking that this is my house, my home, and think that everything here is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. Actually it is. There are certain intrinsic difficulties in grihastha life because the very nature of it is to be attached. I intend to discuss this in one of my lectures here, while I'm here in the UAE. Maybe tomorrow or maybe the next day I'll discuss this, but you're all here and I'm going to be in Dubai. But I intend to discuss that in some length. So, if I do so, maybe you could get the cassette. Although the principle is very simple. Manasa deho geho jo kichuva apilum tu apade nandakisha. basic principle is that instead of thinking everything in this home is for my pleasure, we offer everything to Krishna. Everything in this home is meant for your pleasure. The principle is simple. Application of it may not be so easy. It's also easy, but we are attached. That's the reality we're living with. Anything else?
Maharaj, we discussed just now on the that even in the Krishna consciousness movement itself, sometimes we hear something contradictory when we do lectures to speakers. And at the initial stage, many people hear that and they get confused.
You may become confused, yeah.
Yes, Maharaj.
What to do? I don't know what you can do because this is going to continue.
Yeah, Maharaj. What our
How to understand what is the fact? It may be difficult. When I'm asked about this, I almost inevitably will refer this back to what did Srila Prabhupada say. Now some people may say, well, Prabhupada, then they may say, well, Prabhupada said this, but that was, 30 years ago and now things have changed and this and that. This I find in most instances I find that this is a very weak argument and a very dangerous one. Because then it just opens up to, it just denies the authority of Prabhupada and opens you up to any kind of speculation. So I try to understand what Prabhupada has said. It may be according to your faith also. It may be according to your faith. You may have put faith in someone, but then you have to be careful because you see, frankly, and maybe we don't discuss these things, but you probably would know about it anyway. There have been disciples of Prabhupada who people put their faith in, and then they went right off the wall, and the people who put their faith in them because they didn't understand the principle of parampara, that my guru is a guru because he follows the previous guru, and we're all, especially in our Krishna conscious room, we're following Prabhupada. So when the guru who they put their faith in deviated from the teachings of Srila Prabhupada and said, well, actually, I have a better way of understanding Prabhupada than Prabhupada himself explained. Or they may say that, well, actually, Prabhupada was wrong or something like that. And they went with them to hell. Because their faith was like that. They put their faith in, of course, faith is reposed in a person, but faith is reposed in a person because they have the particular qualification of being eligible to have one's faith reposed in. And what is that qualification? The only qualification of a disciple to be a guru to others is Guru Mukha Padma Vakiti Tete Korea Aikya Ana Korea Manayasha. And to have full faith in the words of his spiritual master. And if one doesn't have that, he may say so, but if he actually teaches in a different way, then it appears that he's deviating from that principle. So we have to be very careful.
But in that case, Maharaj, what is the duty of the disciple?
What is the duty of the disciple in the case where he perceives that where he has put his faith, it may not have been the best place to have put it? Well, this has been discussed in Prabhupada's books, where he quotes from Bhishmadev, who rejected his guru, Parashuram. That Parashuram said, oh, what are you doing? You're going against me, I'm your guru. And Bhishmadev said, Guru api avaliptasya kaya majanata utpanna patipannasya parityago vidhiyate. That even if one is a guru, if he is not properly situated, if he doesn't know how to teach properly, or if he himself was previously following properly but now isn't, he should be fully rejected. And Jiva Goswami explains that means to accept the proper guru who is properly situated. Now, a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Narahari Sarkar, he wrote a book called Krishna Bhajanamrita, in which he discusses what should happen in such a case. In other words, it suggests that at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just after this kind of thing was going on also. And he said that in such a case, when he perceives that the guru is deviating from the instructions which were given by his guru, or which he himself had given himself previously, that he should in that case try to politely, he should approach his guru and not in front of everyone and make a big scene, but politely try to instruct him with the very instructions which he had received from his Guru. And if he's not successful in doing that, then he should wait some time and see if the Guru reforms, and if not, then he should reject him. Now there may be other cases also where the Guru is still a Vaishnava and not really totally deviated, but it may be that he's mostly following nicely, but there are some things which, I mean, again, there are cases in the present Krishna conscious movement where there are devotees who they don't, I mean, I'm speaking very frankly now, but there are some realities that their Guru who is, he's follower of Prabhupada, he's in ISKCON, he's following the Four Regulated Principles and but they don't feel very satisfied with their Guru's explanations of certain things because they feel that it's not 100% in the line of Prabhupada. So while still respecting their Guru, they tend to align themselves more with someone who they feel is teaching properly. Or in some cases they just say, which is probably not so good, they say, well, I'll just read Prabhupada's books for myself. So it does create disturbance when someone who takes this actually a very highly elevated position to be a Guru, but one is eligible to take that only as in his heart he should be a very menial servant. I'm simply passing on what I've received. If one thinks that now I've got something different or better to offer, he's in a very dangerous position. And his followers are also.
In the percentage of Kali, like everybody is suffering now, and we have so many time factors is that, is it not right, like in Bhagavad Gita, the 10th chapter, Krishna tells us in the end that what is the use of having all this jnana, whatever he has told about the opulence?
No. Krishna never said that. That's a misinterpretation. He never said. This is the second time I've heard this now. That Krishna said, what is the use? This is a misinterpretation. That Krishna says at the end of 10th chapter, what is the use of me explaining any more about my vibhutis? Because I'm unlimited and you can't understand them in full. So this is misinterpreted to say that, well, then we shouldn't bother studying Bhagavad Gita because Krishna is unlimited. But there are another 8 chapters after that. So Krishna went on to explain more. It's a rhetorical question. It is a rhetorical statement. You know what that means, a rhetorical statement? It may mean rhetorical statement. Let me try to give an example here. That well, that in itself. That what is the use of someone may bring the meal and it's not cooked properly, and you may say, what is the use of eating this? Well, you can still eat it. It doesn't mean you're not going to eat. It doesn't mean that you should stop eating. But it's one way of saying of criticizing the meal. It's not properly cooked. So Krishna says that what is the need for me to? Because Arjuna asked at the beginning of the 10th chapter that you please explain how I can understand you within this material world. And then Krishna gave some examples. But then he said, Yad Yad Vibhuti Mat Sattvam Srimad Ujjita. And there are so many. Everything wonderful in this material world is a representation of me. So what's the use of going on and on saying more and more? But he didn't say that you should stop. That we should stop trying to understand Krishna. Or that philosophy is useless. He never said that. It's a misunderstanding. So go on in Krishna consciousness. Chant Hare Krishna. Have faith in the holy name. The holy name of Krishna is, he is Krishna, but in a very, very merciful form. That Kali Kali Nam Rupe Krishna Avatar Nam Hoite Hoy Sarva Jagata Nishta. Krishna is present as the holy name. We should have faith in the holy name. Chant the holy name. Krishna will help us. So don't worry too much. I mean, go on chanting. Don't think that everything's hopeless and lost. But at the same time, we should be careful to remain straight on the path. Otherwise, you see, just like some people came to me this morning one man came to me, he's from Chittagong in Bangladesh, where their family is a follower of this Ram Thakur. You don't know this. How can you know? Unless you're from Bangladesh, you wouldn't know. Even he's an avatar for that particular area of Bangladesh. Even other parts of Bangladesh, they don't know him. As when I was traveling in Bangladesh, big public lectures, I used to say that everyone all over the world knows Bangladesh is a very poor, backward country, but as far as I'm concerned, Bangladesh is the luckiest country in the world. And everyone says, Jai. He said, because there are millions and millions of universes. And for all these millions and millions of universes, there's only one God, but in Bangladesh there's a God in every village. So I used to sarcastically joke with him like that. So anyway, he was a follower of Ram Thakur, who taught people to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And their followers all chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But they're completely Mayavadis. They think Ram Thakur is God. Kaivalyana. They think he's God, and you chant Hare Krishna and you merge into. And there are others. There's in Bangladesh also. There's one way on the other side of Bangladesh. Chittagong's in the southeast, in the northwest, in Bogra. There's Shankara Mat, Gauranga Pot. Shankaracharya. Mat, his opinion, and Gauranga Pot. In other words, you chant Hare Krishna according to, but the philosophy is Shankaracharya. So they're chanting Hare Krishna, but that chanting, they'll never get love of Krishna. Because the whole dharana, the whole conception from the very beginning is wrong. So it's important that we chant, that we have a clear understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it.